So quantum computing has been an exciting topic in 2025, and it's always great when we hear from the CEOs. Lucky for us, both Dr. Kulkarni from Rigetti has gone on Yahoo Finance, and Dr. Baratz from D-Wave has also gone on Yahoo Finance, and the video was posted this morning. So I'd like to do a little bit of react and give my 2 cents. Let's jump right in.
Wave's CEO, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So obviously there has been this huge upsurge in interest in and knowledge about quantum, although I think we're all still learning quite a bit about it. What do you think of all of these sort of competing timelines, especially when you guys are already making these machines?
Making them, and we have customers using them today as part of their business operation. So we're truly commercial. There are a number of different approaches to developing quantum computers. Some of them will take longer to mature. Some of them nearer term. At D-Wave, we provide what's called annealing quantum computers, and those are commercial today with companies like NTT DoCoMo or Ford Otosan or Pattison Food Group, all using us today to help benefit their businesses.
So for people who are interested in investing in something like quantum computing, what is the use case today for the computers that you're selling versus the next step and the step after that and the step after that?
Yeah. So I think about it in 3 phases: near term, medium term, long term. In the near term, there are a broad array of problems that we typically think of as business optimization problems. This can be anything from workforce scheduling to manufacturing plant floor optimization, even protein folding. And these problems can be addressed today with D-Wave's annealing quantum computers. And so the companies that I mentioned a minute ago are all using us for business optimization.
So a couple of things about the graphics on the screen. I wanted to point out that Wall Street has 10 vibrating, 0 holds, and 0 sells among analysts. Okay, I think I found the article that they were referencing on the graphic. Google and IBM, new age of quantum computing is about to begin. Google and IBM believe breakthroughs have cleared the path to full-scale quantum systems by 2030. That's less than 4.5 years, though engineers will have to overcome some key issues first. It doesn't seem like a dream anymore, says Jay, who is heading up IBM's VP of Quantum. I really do feel like we've cracked the code and we'll be able to build this machine by the end of the decade. Very cool. I did not see this. Current systems comprise fewer than 200 qubits, but commercial viability requires expanding to 1 million qubits or more. Julian Kelly, head of hardware at Google Quantum AI, believes this team can achieve this goal. All of the engineering and scientific challenges are surmountable. One more thing before we keep listening to Alan. I thought this was very interesting. And as investors, and just if you're passively interested in the topic of quantum computing, we kind of have to do our own research and try to put together some sort of story based on the limited information that we have. So on August 13th, D-Wave announced the first ever Qubits Japan 2025 Quantum Computing User Conference. And this kind of came out of nowhere. They've had a Qubits conference. I went to the one earlier this year in Phoenix, Arizona, and I got to meet the CEO. I got to meet the VP. I've interviewed the VP of Tech Evangelism on this channel, Murray Tom, and I've met a lot of the people over at D-Wave. I thought it was an interesting choice that they are going to do a Qubits in Japan on short notice. So this is scheduled for September 17th, so almost less than a month away. He's brought up in this interview already, they have Japan Tobacco, NTT DoCoMo, Yonsei University, and Incheon Metropolitan City. So what we're seeing is from Japan is kind of this widespread embrace of quantum annealing technology. And I do wonder if the reason for this conference is potentially if there are more system sales that are in the pipeline here, or why would the C-suite think that doing a qubit specifically in Japan was important to have happen now, and now being in 1 month. So very interesting to see. Let's keep watching.
In the medium term, I think that quantum is going to make a significant impact on AI and machine learning. Specifically, quantum computers are very fast and very energy efficient. And what this means is that all this rhetoric around AI requiring nuclear power plants and massive energy generation stations is likely not going to be required to anywhere near that level once quantum computers are a part of the training process.
But when is that?
I think that we may be able to get there within a year or two.
Really?
This is medium term. We're not.
This is a pretty big statement and maybe some new information because we do hear some things repeated in these interviews, but he's saying 1 to 2 years and also addressing the AI data center energy problem. I love this approach because I also covered the interview where Dr. Baratz was on CNBC and he was talking about, hey, maybe it's a good time to short energy stocks. And I thought that was funny. It's a little tongue in cheek but at the same time, they hold the strong belief that systems are going to provide relief on the energy grid and with these large language models and these AI data centers. So very fascinating.
Talking about long term. In fact, at D-Wave, we announced a few days ago a first step toward this by introducing an AI machine learning platform that developers can use to start investigating how to use quantum for large language model training. But we still have a ways to go on developing that technology and bringing a complete product to market. And then longer term, we're talking about almost unimaginable things like designer drugs, where we could develop a drug that would address just your specific set of ailments.
For people who are investing in stock,
I do wish that the CEOs would talk a little bit more about the pipeline dream or kind of like the pipe dreams of all this, because as this technology progresses and as quantum progresses, it's not going to be in a linear way. With the QPU, once they really figure this out, it's going to be an exponential curve in power, and it's going to happen really fast, kind of like the LLMs and how fast they have improved.
Like yours and others, obviously you've seen crazy gains in the stock that are exponential. What do you think is still sort of the biggest misconception, or what kind of education do you have to do for investors and potential investors?
Well, there are quite a few different quantum computing companies that are pursuing different approaches to developing their systems. And so I think you really need to take a look at which of these companies are talking about delivering products 5 or 10 years from now, and which of them are delivering products in the near term. I'm very proud of the fact that we are delivering products today that are creating value. And so I think that that's a really good place to start. But there is huge long-term opportunity as well.
And I should mention the opportunity today. You guys have been growing a lot, but you're still relatively small in terms of the revenue that you bring through the door. And so how quickly do you expect that to ramp up? At some point, is there sort of a tipping point?
Yeah. So there are two components to our business model. One is a service-based component, what we call quantum compute as a service. And for commercial companies that really just care about leveraging quantum to get better solutions to their applications, quantum compute as a service is the ideal model. But it takes time to build a revenue base around that because it's a service-based business. It's a recurring revenue business. Goodness, more predictable revenue growth in the long term, but it takes time to build that base of revenue. We also sell systems. Now, we just started selling systems only about 6 months ago. We sold our first system to the Jülich Supercomputing Center in Germany. That is a very complementary model because it's to supercomputing centers, government labs, so not necessarily commercial. More research-based, but it's near-term revenue recognition. As soon as we install and deliver the system, we recognize revenue up front. So I think the two will work together very well to allow us to build both near-term revenue more rapidly as well as that base of longer-term recurring revenue.
Now, I know you guys.
So I did want to point out to this on the system sales side of things. So we have the Japan Qubits 2025, right? Out of seemingly nowhere, they're having a Qubits 2025 conference in Japan. And then also recently we saw Davidson CEO Dell, and he was talking about how they are using quantum annealing for DoD and military purposes. And that interview, I'm not going to watch the interview, but so Davidson's YouTube channel actually posted this interview, and they're talking about, and this is brand new 3 days ago, and they're talking about how they're using the chip. And we hadn't really heard an update from Davidson since the installation. Is that installation going to turn into a system sale? How is that going to work financially for D-Wave? And we still hear Dale speaking very highly of the technology and how it positions Davidson in a unique way to give an edge in the space that they serve. And this is in regards to national security and military, and very fascinating to kind of see this unfolding. And I actually got to meet Dale in person, and hopefully one day we'll be able to get him on the channel and ask him some questions.
You guys haven't made a lot of acquisitions, but you're thinking about how you want to make acquisitions. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but where are you kind of in that process, and what would be complementary for you guys?
So over the course of the last 6 months, we were fortunate enough to be able to raise a fair amount of cash through at the market transactions, and we thank all our shareholders, and we work every day to try to make them proud of D-Wave and comfortable with their investment. But we now have over $800 million in the bank, and that's well more than we need to.
I really like what he just said, and I've never heard him say that we want investors to be proud of holding D-Wave and comfortable holding D-Wave. Two words, because it can be a bumpy ride being in quantum stocks. I don't have to tell a lot of you who were in quantum stocks in January of this year, in March and April of this year, a very bumpy ride, speaking directly to the comfort, but also now being asked about acquisitions. We saw in the earnings call with Rigetti that Rigetti is not really looking at acquisitions at all, but the way he's framing it here is, yes, this is definitely something on the menu for D-Wave is potential acquisitions, which could be extremely bullish in their gate-based sort of efforts. And then you have Rigetti, on the other hand, kind of viewing themselves as a one-stop shop, as a leader in the space. They don't need to acquire. That's the kind of what we got from their earnings call.
Achieve profitability, we believe, based on our normal course of business. So we are now looking at trying to accelerate growth through acquisitions. We haven't talked about what the acquisition strategy is. We've been working on it for the last few months. I hope to be able to announce something in the near future, but we're very excited to now have the opportunity to pursue that.
All right, well, obviously we'll stay in touch on that. And lastly, I wanted to sort of zoom back out. And I'm curious about the competition between the US and China. We've obviously seen it in AI. How is that playing out in quantum computing? And is there a risk that we see, them outpacing us as they have tried to do in some other technologies?
There's absolutely a risk. So China is by far investing more in quantum than any other country. They're leading at about 17 billion. If we take Europe, the EU, all of those countries together, it's about 11 billion. And the US is at about 5 billion. So we are behind China significantly. In fact, all the countries in the world are well behind China. So I do think it's important for the US to really start focusing on a better strategy for quantum and really to up that investment.
I couldn't agree more. You guys won't believe this. I couldn't agree more. And some of the legislation has been stuck for a while or just hasn't gone anywhere as far as the funding for quantum. And this is the first time I've heard the figure 17 billion. And I think since Dr. Baratz is living in this universe, the last number that I heard was 15 billion. So they're outspending the US by over 3-1. And the consequences or the implications of China being first could be devastating to the tech companies in the United States. And people underestimate this threat all the time. But it is there. It's an imminent threat. You're hearing it. You don't have to listen to me. Listen to Dr. Baratz and read about it. It's pretty insane.
You heard any glimmers of that from Washington? There's obviously been a lot of focus on AI there, but what about quantum?
Yeah, I mean, look, the premier funding mechanism for quantum in the US is called the National Quantum Initiative. And that was put into place under the initial Trump administration. It was supposed to be renewed under Biden. It never got renewed. It still hasn't been renewed. So we really need to get focused on getting that renewed, getting the right programs in place, and making sure that the US is the leader in quantum computing.
This is going to be a big video. We're going to go over to now Dr. Kulkarni, who also talked to Yahoo Finance after their Q2 narrow miss, talking about the company, and I'll give my impressions on Rigetti as well.
Thanks for having me on the show. We had an exciting quarter, but more than the financial numbers, quantum computing is all about technology development right now and technology milestones. So the run-up in stock price as well as the movement today, I believe, has more to do with our technology milestone demonstration than the actual sales and bottom line number and comparison with estimates. Essentially, what we announced 3 weeks ago and reinforced that announcement yesterday is that we have deployed our latest system on cloud that has 4 chiplets of 9 qubit each, so total 36 qubits with a what we call fidelity, 2 qubit gate fidelity of 99.5%. That's the biggest quantum computer using chiplets at a very high fidelity right now, state of the art. And that's what you see the reaction right now. I don't believe it has anything to do with the financial numbers. It's a huge technology milestone to get chiplets demonstrated at that fidelity, because fundamentally it gives you a viable scaling path towards thousands of qubits, which is really what you want in the long term.
Very important. Everything that he just said was super critical. The interview could end right there. And that's everything you kind of need to know about Rigetti and where they are right now. They just released this 36 qubit multi-chip processor. They have this chiplet approach, which now gives them visibility and a path towards their 100 qubit machine by the end of 2025. They've also announced hardware and delivered on hardware within maybe a month or so window. So when they say they're going to deliver on hardware, I can think of companies like, for example, Tesla that says they're going to deliver a hardware or software, and it's years and years down the line. It's very important for an R&D company like Rigetti, which has a lot of investors and the company is trading at a rich valuation, that they do deliver when they say, we are going to have this hardware. So I have confidence personally as an investor in Rigetti that they are going to deliver on their 100 qubit chip, and that it does give them visibility to scaling further in the future.
So hopefully that's the reason why the stock has done what it has.
I do want to get to the technology, Subodh. Just one more question though, for investors listening. What does the cash and burn rate look like right now, Subodh, at the business?
Sure. So at the end of last quarter, we had about $572 million cash, no debt. And our burn rate right now at the current sales rate is about $60 million a year. So we have plenty of cash to.
So let's look at that. Let's look at what he just said. So basically they have a yearly burn of about 60 million, but they have over $600 million in assets. Look at the difference even from 2023, 2024. They have a bunch of assets and very little liability. So their situation has improved immensely, and their operating income, cost and OPEX is fairly flat. So they're looking very good from a financial perspective to continue the work they're doing.
Advance our technology roadmap and get products commercialized and get ourselves to profitability in the long run.
For the uninitiated, Subodh, I'm curious, how would you explain the advantages of quantum computing, Subodh, over traditional computing? What does it unlock? What are the problems it solves for?
So fundamentally, quantum computing does things very differently than classical computing that we are all used to. Quantum computing, we use multiple states at the same time, and that gives us an exponentially higher computing capability compared to classical computing. Also, at the same time, it consumes fractionally lower power compared to classical computing. So we get incredibly powerful computer, like million or billion times more powerful than classical computer, at a fraction of the energy consumption of classical computers. And right now there's
I think it's worth punctuating, because these computers and these data centers take up so much energy, and we're building huge data centers. And I know I'm beating this. If you follow the channel, watch every video, but it is a major problem. And as we build out data centers, it is going to only become a bigger problem. So the fact that you can potentially have a more powerful computer that draws less energy is a disruptor on multiple fronts. It's a disruptor in both the power, the innate power of the computer, and the resources required to run the computer. So it's a multi-level disruptor.
Huge issue with power consumption related to GPUs. So quantum computing has this dual advantage of higher computing power at an extremely low energy consumption. There are many kinds of problems that cannot be solved with classical computing, like weather forecasting, drug discovery, Encryption is a big one that's getting a lot of attention. Fundamentally, our entire encryption system right now is based on the fact that classical computers cannot separate out prime factors. With quantum computers, you can do that easily, which means you can easily break any encryption code, but it also means to come up with clever encryption schemes, you need a quantum computer. So this whole area with quantum computing of post-quantum cryptography and what quantum computers can do with encryption, as well as many clusters of problems, is getting a lot of attention. Clearly, there's national security at stake here, given the stakes involved. That's the excitement about quantum computing. There are many studies done. There are many numbers that are floating around from McKinsey, BGC, and other agencies. Typically, you see numbers in the neighborhood of a couple $2 billion market size about 4 to 5 years from now, an inflection point somewhere in the 4 to 5 years from now, which we call quantum advantage. And that's when the sales trajectory takes off to 10x of those numbers in about 5 to 10 years after that. So we're talking of a market that's hundreds of billions of dollars a decade or two from now. But right now, we are clearly in the R&D stage.
So I love how Dr. Kulkarni always kind of just is very conservative in his estimates. And also he's saying, yes, in 5 years, this could be a 10x as far as the operating revenue and that type of thing. You heard from multiple analysts. Is there any way with your current tech stack that you could see that accelerating? So they did push him a little bit on that. As you could imagine, Rigetti is not the only quantum computer player in town. You also have IonQ. You have lots of private companies, and you have international companies that are also working on just competitiveness alone. They'll be pushed to develop faster and potentially accelerate the timeline. But then also Dr. Kulkarni talks again about national security. And this has come up now both in the Baratz interview and now the Kulkarni interview. And it's not by coincidence. These CEOs of these public quantum companies understand that the stakes are much higher than the stock price. The stakes are literally national security. And that is something that everyone should be worried about, whether you're invested in these companies or not. What would happen if a hostile nation state had access to a sufficiently powerful quantum machine and could hack RSA encryption?
We clearly need to perfect the technology to get to that big milestone in about 4 years, which we call quantum advantage, which is essentially when you can take a quantum computer and take on almost any application that your classical computer does, but does it in a superior way.
I was talking to an analyst today, Subodh, and I guess he was leading to where you were just going there in terms of milestones ahead, because his point was, he said, listen, I think what investors want to know from Subodh is how quickly he can scale up to 100 qubits and then 1,000, because it's sort of like an LLM trying to, doing the work, one GPU versus a data center. What's your answer to that?
So sure, what we have said is there are 4 things we need to do to get to quantum advantage, which is when quantum computers can really proliferate in data center and start doing practical applications as well as solving some really difficult, challenging problems. And those 4 things are: we need a minimum of 1,000 qubits. We need a minimum of 99.9% 2-qubit gate fidelity. We need a maximum of 50 nanosecond gate speed, and we need real-time error correction. Assuming we do those 4 things, we believe we will be able to demonstrate quantum advantage, and that's where business really takes off. Now,
so he's repeated this on the earnings call and now in this interview with Yahoo Finance. And he also said, and I'm trying to pick up on these little nuances in these interviews, that it will be able to do anything a classical computer could do, but faster and more efficiently. He says anything, not just a certain subset of problems or certain class of problems. And remember, earlier in 2025, we had Jensen to this panel of all these quantum computer companies that we should just look at quantum computers as an instrument that can do a certain subset of problems. Now, Dr. Kulkarni is saying here,
by itself, the most important one we believe is the fidelity one. That's really the most challenging one. This chiplet demonstration we did yesterday, and that's why it got a lot of excitement going, is a clear way to address the qubit count challenge that we have. With chiplets, which are used in semiconductor industry all the time, we see a relatively easy path. I don't want to say easy, nothing is easy in quantum computing, but a relatively easy path to scale up the qubit count to 1,000 qubits from where we are right now. Fidelity, we are at 99.5% today. We need to get to
nothing is easy in quantum computing, and I'm not a PhD in quantum computing. I don't have the scientific background to understand fully what is happening on the scientific level that's driving this. But just think that at the end of the day, we are processing information through atoms, literally atoms, qubits, right? That we're working on scales that we can't see or could barely see under the most powerful microscopes. And we're freaking doing computing through them. So yeah, it's really hard. And it's really impressive that we're even having this conversation. And that's the reason why it's fun to nerd out on it and fun to learn about it and fun to think about the possibilities, because if we're actually able to pull this off, could it actually lift humanity into a different type of civilization? Like it's really crazy to think about what we're doing with quantum computing. And when I say we, I mean companies like Rigetti, I mean companies like D-Wave and Quantinuum and PsiQuantum and IonQ and all of these different private and public companies that are pursuing this technology.
99.9%, that is probably the most daunting challenge we have ahead of ourselves. Getting the gate speeds, we are already at 60 to 70 nanoseconds, faster than 50 nanoseconds. That should not be a big challenge, particularly for the modality we use, which is called superconducting gate-based modality, where gate speeds are intrinsically very fast. Some other modalities like trapped ion and pure atoms, they have a big challenge where they are more than 1,000 times slower than superconducting gate-based modality. But for us with superconducting gate modality, that's not a challenge. And real-time error correction is what we use in our classical computers right now. There are many different ways of doing error correction, but we obviously need that to address the last few errors that are left in the system. So we will obviously push to get these four things under control ASAP. Our realistic timeline says we are at least 3 to 5 years away from that milestone right now. So that's why we are using a number 4. Obviously, if everything works in our favor, we may be talking 3, but we are talking technology development. Things may not work exactly as planned, and it may be 5 years. So that's why.
So you heard it from the man himself. This is the first time I've heard him say 3 years. And we've heard him say 4, we're hearing him say 5. This is not 15, 20, or 30 years. We're talking about low single digit years. We're hearing it from IBM, Google. We're hearing it from the quantum pure play companies. It's a very exciting time to be investing in quantum computing, whether that's investment just with your pocketbook or if it's just learning about these companies and what's happening with this technology. And I'm personally doing both. I'm investing my time and energy to learn about these companies because I think this is a fascinating time in technology and just human history, honestly. And anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Really like to hear from D-Wave and Rigetti. And I love that they're doing these interviews and giving us more information so we can put together the pieces of this puzzle. Hope you enjoy this. We'll see you in the next one. I hope you really enjoyed that content. It's my goal to provide quality content as much as possible and with as little interruption as possible. If you'd like to support my efforts and the channel, I offer 3 different membership options. It's super easy to sign up and it starts at just $4.99 a month. And you just click the subscribe button and you can learn more.